We've got a very special episode for you today. I'm here at Genesee Country Village Museum, and I'm going to have Brian Nagel, the brewmaster here, explain to us the entire brewing process here in the late 18th century and early 19th century at the brewery here at the village. This is going to be great. Thanks for joining us today on 18th Century Cooking.
Hello, my name is Brian Nagel, Director of Interpretation here at Genesee Country Village Museum. I wanted to welcome you to the Walter Grieve's Brewery here at the museum. The brewery was built actually by our founder, John Whaley, who was president of Genesee Brewing Company at the time the museum got started in 1966. He wanted to make sure the village was complete, so along with the houses, the businesses, the shops, the churches and taverns, we also had a working brewery here at the village. So we're very happy to be celebrating the tradition here at the museum now, brewing the way it was done back in 1803. We're very lucky that Thomas Douglas, the 5th Earl of Selkirk, sailed from Scotland to North America. One of the things he did when he was here was actually visited a number of businesses, business owners, all across New York State. Luckily for us, he stopped in Geneva, New York, and talked to Walter Grieves, who owned a brewery just like this one, a malt house to make malted barley, and a distillery right on the shore of Seneca Lake. We know that Mr. Grieves was using a pump log just like this one to pump water up from the lake into the brew kettle. Today we're using a German-style brew kettle to heat up our water for doing the mashing, along with boiling our wort as part of the process as well. The main difference between a German-style brew kettle and an English kettle is the English kettles have a spigot on the side to make moving liquid around much easier than we have today. For me now, my process of moving water or wort around is using a dipper just like this one to move about 160 gallons of water from the kettle right behind me down the trough into our mash tun. Each time we do the mashing here in the brewery, we're using 250 pounds of grain of malted barley and wheat, along with 160 gallons of hot water to do the mashing process. We use 4 kinds of grain here. We use a pale malted barley, brown and amber roasted barley, and wheat as well. Before we can actually use the grain, however, we have to mill the grain. We have to break open the hull on the outside to actually expose the starch and the sugar on the inside of the grain to be able to convert the starches and sugars into more sugar to make our wort doing the mashing process. Now that our grain has all been milled, Matt is just finishing up putting the grain into the mash tun. Now the mash tun is ready to accept the hot water along with the grain. The mash tun has a false bottom in the bottom of it. That means there's 3 pie-shaped pieces of wood with holes drilled in it. This serves as a platform for the grain, but also as a sieve or a colander to allow the liquid to flow through our wort or sugar water and keep the grain behind. I'm back at the brew kettle, back to check the temperature of our water. Matt's built a great fire for us. You can see the steam rising right now. I'm going to reach in. Yeah, that feels just about right. I'll now start to ladle the hot water down the trough behind me into the mash tun and begin the mashing process. All of our milled grain is now in the mash tun. The water is going to flow down this trough and into our side pipe. Our side pipe has 2 doors in it. One door is actually in the bottom below the false bottom, which will allow the hot water to percolate up through the grain, providing a very even and efficient mash during the process. Once my grain is floating in that hot water, I'm going to open up this door and allow the water to come in right through this door into the grain and finish off the mashing process. Now that we've combined the hot water and the grain, we'll begin the mashing process. Matt will stir the grain and the water together for about half an hour, and then we'll let it steep together for about an hour and a half, allowing the hot water to steep up through the grain in the beginning. Gives us a nice, even, very efficient mash. Now we're letting it rest for a bit. For 2 hours, we'll get together and we'll begin to allow the wort to flow through the false bottom and down to our underback. We've waited our 2 hours for the mash to conclude. Everything looks good upstairs. We're now going to open the valve in the bottom of the mash tun, allowing our wort to flow through the false bottom and into the underback to start collecting the wort to get ready to pump it upstairs to start the final boil. This is the second pump log we have here in the brewery. The first one brought water up from the basement, from the lake. This one brings up the wort that we just sent down from the mash tun down to the underback. It's been collected there, about 160 gallons of wort collected down below. This pump goes right down into the bottom of that underback, and now we just pump that liquid back up here into our brew kettle. Matt's got the fire going once again. We're going to add some more sugar to this, more fermentable sugar, molasses or brown sugar or maple sugar in our neck of the woods. And then 2 pounds of hops will go in as well. We want to balance off the flavor of the maltiness, the sweetness of the brew, along with the hops we have here as well. Well, we finished boiling our wort. We boiled it for about 2 hours. We added in our 12 pounds of sugar. We've put in the 2-pound bag of hops for the last half hour of the boil. Now we've actually begun to transfer the liquid, the wort, from the brew kettle over into our chillers. The very important part of the process is installing a hop jack on the far end of the trough. Hop jack is a bag full of straw in a box with dowels in the bottom. That hop jack will capture any of the hops, big bits of grains that have made it through the process so far. Hopefully keep our wort as clean as possible when it goes into the chillers. Right now I'm standing next to our chillers, or our cooling trays, that allows us to cool down our wort from 212 degrees down to blood temperature, or about 100 degrees Fahrenheit by the touch going through here. Critical part of the brewing process to make sure we can get that cooled down to that temperature within 2 hours of coming off of the boil. If it takes longer than that, it's going to sour our batch or spoil our batch and not be fit to actually go on to fermentation and to create the beers and ales. So for that purpose, we're back in 1803, only brewing in, again, March, April, and May, and October to December, when it's cool enough outside for this wort to cool down in a couple of hours. We're still waiting for our wort to cool down a little bit more, but once it's down to blood temperature, about 100 degrees Fahrenheit, we're going to open up the last of the plugs on our chillers and bring that wort down through this hose into one of our fermenters. We are open fermenting the ale right now. We're going to pitch our yeast, add our yeast into the mixture, and that yeast is going to go into the wort. It's going to start to feed on the sugar in the wort, converting that sugar into alcohol, but also making carbon dioxide gas as a byproduct. We call it open fermentation, even though we have some small caps that go on top of those. It'll stay in there fermenting, creating that carbon dioxide gas and alcohol for 3 or 4 days in an active process. After that starts slowing down, we'll open up the valve in the front of the fermenting tun and send that now partially fermented beer through small funnels in the floor down to the basement to do secondary or final fermentation. We're now in the basement of the building. You'll notice the stone walls behind me. Also coming down from the first floor, a leather hose. This is going to bring the primary fermentation from the fermentation casks upstairs, the tuns upstairs, down to our casks down here. This is where the final fermentation takes place. We're going to bring down that beer from upstairs. We're going to bring it into our casks. We're going to add some more yeast and some more sugar to keep that fermentation going. Mr. Grieve's Brewery is making the high quality or the strong beers and ales, and so we want to keep that going here as well. We're going to actually put a cap on the top of this. We want to capture the carbon dioxide gas coming off of the fermentation process to create the carbonation in the beers in 1803. We'll come down every once in a while. We'll open up the cask. We will pour off some of the beer inside, check for its alcohol content with a hydrometer, but also its carbonation as well. In November and December, we can let this actually ferment in here a bit longer. It's colder outside, it's cooler down in the basement. It'll stay safe longer as well. We can make our stronger beers and ales in those months, getting it close to even 13% alcohol at that point in time. When it's ready to go, when it's the right alcohol content and the right carbonation, we'll pour off the beer and the ales into 32.5-gallon casks that are then sold to the stores, the taverns, the inns in and around Geneva, New York. And then it's sold out to customers there by the growler, by the pail, by the bottle as well. Thank you very much for joining us today at the Walter Grieve's Brewery at Genesee Country Village Museum. We're so proud to be able to showcase the way brewing was done in the late 1700s and early 1800s here in Western New York. So please come out and see us when you have a chance between May and October and ask us any questions you'd like to. We'd be more than happy to share our story and the story of early brewing in North America.
I really want to give a special thank you to Brian Nagel for explaining this brewing process to us. He did such an amazing job. And if you're ever in this Western New York area, please come and visit the Genesee Country Village Museum. It's an amazing place. And I want to thank you for coming along and joining us as we savor the flavors and the aromas of the 18th century. I want to give a special thanks to all the folks at Genesee Country Village and Museum for all their help. Make sure to check out their website. If you're new to our channel, I want to welcome you. You can subscribe by clicking the button right up here. Also check out our related videos. Thanks so much for watching.